tax break plan was announced for companies that increase shareholder returns alongside a financial package to help vulnerable groups. These were unveiled today as part of the government's economic policy goals for the second half of the year. The police are picking up speed in their investigation of what caused the deadly car accident on Monday night in central Seoul, examining the vehicle and recorded video footage. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visited a munitions factory after a key workers' party meeting, apparently to encourage people about the economy, which some watchers see as a link to the regime's ambition to export arms. It's July 3rd, 2024. This is Newscenter. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We begin with key economic policies unveiled today seeking to boost long-term growth. One of the key goals is to provide tax incentives to companies that enhance their corporate values and expand shareholder returns. Choi Min-jong reports.
South Korea has unveiled measures to foster the growth of new industries. The Finance Ministry revealed a roadmap on Wednesday that aims to incentivize companies that enhance their corporate value and increase shareholder returns. This will be done by providing a range of tax incentives and benefits. First, the government plans to reduce corporate taxes by 5% for companies that increase shareholder returns exceeding 5% over the span of 3 years. Companies can do this by increasing dividends or canceling treasury stocks. This applies to all companies regardless of size. The government will also lower income tax rates for the shareholders of companies that have high corporate value. Accordingly, if the dividend income is 12 million won, the tax burden will be reduced by 100,000 won. If the dividend income is 22 million won, the tax burden will be reduced by 200,000 won. The government is implementing the new regulations temporarily for 3 years, but they will first need to be passed by the National Assembly. Choi Min-jong, Arirang News.
For more on what was announced today, our correspondent Lee Soo-jun is joining us in the studio. Soo-jun, other than the corporate support plan that we just saw, what does the government say when it comes to its most recent projections about the economy?
In short, it's quite positive across the board. The government releases its economic policies direction based on revised economic projections for economic growth, inflation, employment, and current account balance. On Wednesday, the Finance Ministry announced its economic policy direction for the latter half of the year, where it revised its economic growth projection for 2024 from 2.2% to 2.6%. This upward revision was mostly due to a strong growth forecast for exports, thanks to an increased demand for AI as well as semiconductors. And the inflation rate is expected to ease to 2.6%. This comes as data from Statistics Korea on Tuesday showed that the country's consumer price index, a key gauge of inflation, rose by 2.4% in June compared to the same month the year before. This is the lowest figure seen in 11 months, inching closer to the target inflation at 2%. As for employment, the government projects that as the economy shows signs of recovery, it will go up by more than 60% on year. And this year, South Korea is expected to see a current account surplus of $63 billion as exports continue to recover. Let's take a listen to what the president said about this current state of the economy.
이렇게 성장률을 비롯한 거시 지표는 눈에 띄게 개선되고 있습니다만 아직 그 온기가 민생 경제의 활력으로 이어지지 않아 안타까운 마음이 있습니다. 효과가 나타나는 시차를 줄이면서 민생의 구조적, 근본적 문제를 해결해 나가야 합니다. 특히 팬데믹 때
Well, despite the positive outlook, there are still concerns. What are other focuses?
Well, this time the focus is on vulnerable groups. The government said that while the newly revised projections for the second half are promising, vulnerable groups have yet to feel that the economy is actually getting better. Here's what the finance minister said on this.
But because the recovery speed varies across sectors due to high inflation and interest rates, small business owners still feel that the economy is struggling.
To help small business owners, the government will spend 25 trillion won, or nearly 18 billion US dollars, to provide financial support, business growth, and recovery opportunities, as well as a one-stop platform that allows them to more easily access necessary information. This includes an extension of government loan maturity, which, according to an expert, will prove to be the most helpful. Let's take a listen.
I think the most effective way is postponing interest rate payment to banks. In terms of the moral hazard problem, it is very difficult to decrease size of the money that borrowed from the banks. But instead, there is small room for banks and for medium and small-sized companies to delay their interest rate payment.
And the government plans to raise the upper annual revenue limit for businesses to receive electricity bill subsidies from around $21,000 to around $43,000. The government will also help small business owners expand digitally to accelerate their growth. By the end of this year, there will be nearly 60 traditional markets where products are also available online. As for measures to help business owners get back on their feet, it plans to offer monetary incentives each month for small business owners that were forced to close to attend reemployment programs or to start new businesses. Lastly, it plans to create a one-stop platform where small business owners can find important information regarding their finances, employment, and businesses in one place, with the finalized version to be in operation by January next year.
So, Jin, are there any measures directed towards maintaining the trend of getting prices under control?
So the government plans to remain vigilant, as you can tell by the amount it's planned to spend to stabilize prices. The support measures to get prices under control in the second half of the year amount to $4 billion. This includes implementing tariff quota rates for 51 items, such as vegetables and fruits, which will allow for lower tariff rates on imports of products within a certain quantity, as well as expanding contract farming of fruits and developing more kim farms. Here's why these continued efforts to tame inflation are necessary.
The general citizens in Korea do not feel that the economy is getting better these days because inflation is higher than that of their wage increases. But as the inflation is stabilizing by end of this year, I think Korean people will see that the economic situation gets better. The prices of the agricultural products is pretty much stabilized from last month.
So with these pan-governmental efforts, people will hopefully soon be able to feel that the economy is in fact getting better, and that it's not just the data.
Okay, thanks for that, Sujin.
Thank you for having me.
Police investigation is picking up speed to see what caused the deadly car accident on Monday night in central Seoul. In the meantime, police confirmed another injured individual. Choi Soo-hyung brings us up to speed.
The police have confirmed that another person was injured in Monday's tragic car accident in central Seoul, bringing the total to 7 injured as well as the 9 people who were killed. Investigators continue to dig into the cause of the accident, with the police stating they had found skid marks where the car stopped. Also, analysis from the National Forensic Service are looking into the vehicle, footage from nearby CCTV cameras and the car's dashcam, as well as statements from witnesses. It has been reported that the van data recorder installed in the vehicle shows that the driver pressed the accelerator pedal hard just before the accident. The driver, who has more than 40 years of experience as a city bus driver, is blaming sudden unintended acceleration. The police took the driver in on charges of accidental homicide and will question him later due to injuries he himself suffered in the crash. Moreover, the police stated that the driver was negative in alcohol and all quick drug tests. They added that they are considering all possibilities, including a mistake or driver error. The car, driven by the 68-year-old man, exited the Chosun Hotel and drove in the wrong direction in a one-way street, colliding with two vehicles before plowing into a group of pedestrians waiting at the crosswalk. The accident occurred near Seoul City Hall, resulting in the death of two City Hall employees who were returning to work after dinner. 4 colleagues from a nearby bank were also killed in the accident. It was reported they were celebrating one of them having been promoted on the day. Citizens visited the scene to pay their condolences to the victims. Police have acknowledged the severity of the incident and have requested the National Forensic Service to complete their investigation as soon as possible. Hyundai, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, across the border, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visited a munitions factory shortly after wrapping up a key Workers' Party meeting. Our North Korean affairs correspondent Kim Jong-sil explains what the visit could entail.
After wrapping up a key political meeting, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on Tuesday visited a munitions factory and other manufacturing sites along with senior officials of the party's leadership. North Korea's state-run Korean Central News Agency reported on Wednesday that Kim visited the National Defense Industrial Enterprise and observed production lines there. The enterprise is known to produce munitions including 240mm shells for multiple launch rocket systems. Kim's visit to the weapons facility could be in line with his emphasis not only on enhancing the regime's self-defense capabilities, but also to take advantage of Russia's war with Ukraine, as Pyongyang and Moscow have been bolstering ties through arms transfers. The visit also came shortly after the 4-day meeting of the Workers' Party Central Committee, which started on Friday. There, Kim emphasized the North's accomplishments in the first half of the year, stating that the economy was in a clear upturn. An official at South Korea's Ministry of Unification said on Tuesday that what is striking from this meeting is that there was no mention of diplomatic achievements or messages to South Korea and the U.S.
It's possible the North was aware that it could be subjected to international condemnation if it puts too much emphasis on its achievements in defense and diplomacy. I think Kim's intention of only stressing economic agendas is to strengthen the regime by bringing up sectors directly linked to people's livelihoods.
The Unification Ministry official also said the regime may hold a standing committee ahead of the Supreme People's Assembly and discuss constitutional amendments.
It's highly possible that North Korea would strike out the phrase in its Constitution Article 9 that says the North would strive to reunify the country on the principle of independence, peaceful reunification, and great national unity.
The Unification Ministry official said the government will keep a close eye on what direction the regime is taking. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., a Texas congressman has become the first lawmaker within the Democratic Party to openly call on President Biden to surrender his bid for re-election following the debate fallout. Lee Seung-jae has more.
For the first time, a House Democrat has publicly called for U.S. President Joe Biden to step down as the party's candidate for the upcoming November presidential election. According to Democrat House Representative Lloyd Doggett of Texas on Tuesday, Biden should make the painful and difficult decision to withdraw, citing the president's poor performance during last week's televised debate with former President Donald Trump. However, Doggett stressed that his remarks do not in any way diminish his respect for Biden's achievements, adding that the incumbent president has always prioritized his country, unlike his opponent. While a number of Democrats have voiced concerns for Biden's bid for a second term behind closed doors, Doggett is the first to openly express his concerns and opposition. Responding to these concerns, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said Tuesday that the top office respects the opinions and thoughts of concerned party members. Amid rumors that Biden could potentially be replaced, a survey was conducted by CNN on 1,274 people from June 28th to 30th, shortly after the presidential debate. The survey asked participants who would win in a hypothetical matchup if Biden was to drop out of the race. Most hypothetical Democrat presidential candidates had less support than Trump. including Vice President Kamala Harris and California Governor Gavin Newsom. However, when asked who would win in the November presidential election between former First Lady Michelle Obama and Trump, 50% of respondents chose the former First Lady, compared to Trump, who had 39% support. Meanwhile, in the same survey, 49% said they would vote for Trump, compared to 43% who showed support for Biden. 이승재, Arirang News.
A shocking crowd disaster in India at a religious event leads to more than 100 losses of lives, mostly women and children. Park Gun-woo covers the tragic event.
A crowd crush at a Hindu religious gathering in India killed more than 100 and injured scores more, according to local police and administration officials on Tuesday local time. Most of the victims of the crush in India's northern state of Uttar Pradesh are said to be women and children.
I came to attend the event with 8 other people, but no one survived. I do not know there was a sudden commotion. I did not even realize what happened.
Though the cause of the incident is yet unclear, local news reports citing authorities said heat and suffocation in a makeshift tent at the site could have been a factor. Local police also pointed to overcrowding as a possible factor, as there were around 15,000 people at the site, which was 3 times more than the host had originally permitted. Police Inspector General Shalab Mathur said a high-level inquiry has been launched to investigate the circumstances surrounding the incident. Also on Tuesday, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed his condolences for the victims.
I express my condolences to the families of those who lost their lives in the tragic incident. I wish a speedy recovery to all the injured. The administration, under the supervision of the state government, is carrying out rescue and relief operations. Senior officials of the central government are in continuous communication with the state government of Uttar Pradesh.
This was not the first such incident to happen in India, as crowd crushes at religious events in 2011 and 2013 led to over 100 deaths. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
In other news, Korea's foreign exchange reserves shrank in June for the 3rd month in a row. According to the Bank of Korea on Wednesday, the reserves stood at over $412 billion at the end of June, down over $600 million on month. The drop is being linked to the repayment of foreign exchange stabilization bonds and the BOK's foreign currency swap with the country's pension fund. As of the end of May, South Korea is the world's 9th largest holder of foreign reserves. Hyundai Motor set a new company sales record in the United States in the first half of this year. The company on Wednesday said that it sold a total of more than 431,000 vehicles during the first 6 months, including its luxury brand Genesis. This is the 1.3% increase on year. Furthermore, both Hyundai Motor and its sister company Kia set new highs in the number of eco-friendly vehicles sold for any half-year period. They sold more than 155,700 electric and hybrid models in the U.S., which is a 17% increase on year. Korean instant noodles or ramyeon are becoming more popular around the world through viral marketing on social media and the launch of new products. The Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs also announced on Wednesday that exports of Korean instant noodles came to almost $600 million in the first half of the year. It's around a 32% increase compared to the same period last year. The biggest overseas markets are China and the United States, surpassing $100 million each in exports last month. On the cultural front, the Korea Heritage Service says that Goryeong in Gyeongsang-buk-do province has been designated as an ancient city. Goryeong is an area with key historical links to the Great Gaya Confederacy. And since ancient cities hold historical significance when it comes to politics and culture, once designated, they are expected to help bring improvements to the local area. Goryeong will become the country's 5th official ancient city, along with Gyeongju, Buyeol, Gwangju, and Iksan. It was also declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site last year. There is a new agriculture technology that allows the growing and harvesting of strawberries even in the midsummer and lowers greenhouse operational costs. Cha Yoon-kyung explains what that is.
This is a strawberry farm in Pyeongtaek, Gyeonggi-do Province. Farmers usually finish harvesting strawberries at the end of May. However, a strawberry harvest is in full swing here in June. The secret is a water-cooled air conditioning and heating system, which makes it possible to extend the harvest season for strawberries by using awning screens and sprinklers after setting up a water-cooled air conditioning and heating system.
The heat island effect happens in the house. Hot air cannot move to where cold air collects, but the cold air rises as it gets hotter.
Another benefit is that farmers can save on the huge costs of using standard air conditioning and heating. This new system utilizes underground water, which is always around 15 degrees Celsius. Therefore, this new technology is much cheaper than the existing one, which uses air or geothermal heat as a heat source.
Underground water is efficient with its year-round temperature, making huge amount of deviation both in summer and in winter. The temperature goes up to 35 degrees in summer. It makes 20 degrees of deviation.
According to the research of Korea Agriculture Technology Promotion Agency, the savings on costs are between 70% to 90% compared to the standard system. Harvesting strawberries until July using the water-cooled air conditioning system is now possible. Farmers can set up the water-cooled air conditioning facility as long as they can drill for underground water.
The biggest problem for farmers in Korea is the high cost of air conditioning and heating in their greenhouses. We look for companies that have the technology and products which can cut costs dramatically and support them.
The water-cooled air conditioning and heating system was developed 4 years ago, and about 600 have been set up around 70 cities and counties nationwide. The number of farms using the system is expected to rise in the future because of the dramatic cost saving. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
Heavy rain across the country from yesterday has almost stopped today. After the rain, the daytime heat became severe in the southern parts of the country. In particular, the daytime temperature exceeded 30 degrees Celsius, with a heat wave warning issued in the south. It will rain all over the country again from tomorrow night. The amount of rain is the highest in the Chungcheong-do provinces. Heavy rain of up to 150 millimeters will fall in Chungcheong-namdo province by Friday, and more than 120 in the Chungcheongbuk-do and Jeollabuk-do provinces. More than 100 millimeters is expected in the southern Gyeonggi-do province. Please be prepared. Tomorrow, Seoul will start off at 22, Daejeon, Gwangju, Daegu, and Busan 23 degrees. Highs will be topping out at 28 in Seoul and Chuncheon, Gyeongju 34 degrees. There will be many rainy days this weekend and next week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, look my way. Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. (24시간) 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Hello and welcome to Within the Frame. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Han-daeun. After surprising the world with a new military pact with Russia, North Korea is ramping up its missile provocations, boasting the capacities of what it claims to be new type tactical missiles. That's as South Korea resumed live fire drills near the inter-Korean border and conducted the first ever multi-domain joint military drill with the U.S. and Japan, sending a strong message to the North. Amid heightened tensions on the Korean peninsula, the Central Committee of North Korea's Workers' Party wrapped up a 4-day key plenary meeting. For an expert analysis on North Korea's latest activities and their implications, Dr. Goryeong, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Strategy, joins us in the studio. It's great to have you back.
It's nice to be here.
So North Korea fired 2 ballistic missiles early Monday morning, and the South Korean military said that one of them seems to have exploded in midair with debris falling on land near its capital, Pyongyang. But North Korea later claimed that it successfully tested a new type tactical missile that can carry a super large warhead. What's your analysis of the latest missile launch?
Well, the North Koreans claim that the reason why the second missile that exploded in midair didn't reach quite the range it was specified to reach was because it was intentional on the part of North Korea. And the explanation they put out was the North Korea essentially tried to test the lower bound of their purported range of their new missile system. According to the North Koreans, the lower bound for the missile system is 90 kilometers, and the upper bound is around 600 kilometers. So the first missile, according to the North Korean claim, tested the upper bound, which indeed reached the 600 kilometers range. And of course, the second one, with the South Koreans observed having exploded in midair, in fact, reached the lower range according to the North Korean justification. But the reason why we have to give more credence to the South Korean explanation is because the direction to which the second missile flew towards was Pyongyang city itself, where the plenary meeting is taking place in plain view, also as Kim Jong-un being present. So in North Korea especially, sending a live missile towards the capital city when Kim Jong-un himself is in the public stage will be a major no-no, as well as a major risk to the life of the leadership in North Korea. So chances that this test trajectory wasn't intentional. So if the direction was wrong, chances that range was also not intended to be the lower bound of the technical specification of this new missile type.
The South Korean military called North Korea's missile launch a deception. It claims that it was successful, a deception. But whether the missile was a failure or not, it seems like North Korea's missile technology is advancing with each test. Now, some analyze that North Korea's latest missile launch could have been aimed at exports to Russia. How do you see what's your take on this, and how do you see North Korea's latest series of provocations that included, according to its claims, were successful tests of ballistic missiles carrying multiple warheads as well as a super large warhead?
Well, chances that the North Koreans are developing a super large warhead short-range ballistic missile, and if they are doing so, it's clearly intended for the Russian export at this point, because what we have seen throughout last year was that the frequency of North Korean provocations involving this type of missile, which we believe to be a KN-23 short-range ballistic missile, which in fact, interesting enough, is a copy of the Russian original short-range ballistic missile called Iskander-M. So clearly it was originated from Russia, at least the design. And now what we have seen since last year was that the frequency of provocations employing this particular missile dropped down significantly. In fact, actually dropped down to zero after Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin met at the Vostochny airspace in Russia for their first summit in many years. So if you look at the juxtapose the decrease in the frequency of provocations using the KN-23 missiles, and also we observed that there's an increase or usage of a KN-23-like or Iskander missile in the Ukrainian war theater by the Russians. It looks like the North Koreans might have been exporting the entirety of their KN-23 stock to Russia, obviously because Russia is paying top money for the North Korean missiles at this point. So if North Koreans are developing a super large warhead for their KN-23 missile, chances that they're going to export to Russia, not just because of a revenue, but there's the motivation to test operationally their new missile type. So it's likely that North Koreans are going to export their first batch of the new tactical missile to Russia for their use in Ukraine.
With regards to North Korea's possible missile exports to Russia, it would be a surprise to no one, as North Korea's missiles were found on the battlefields in Ukraine, according to various reports, not to mention the cozy relationship between Kim and Putin, and of course their new military pact. South Korea resumed live fire drills at artillery ranges near the land border with North Korea, which marked the first time in 6 years. But the military refrained from blaring loudspeaker broadcasts this time. How do you assess the level of South Korea's response to North Korea's latest provocations?
So it's a message. It's a message from South Korea to North Korea that South Korea is ready to respond kinetically with overwhelming firepower against any escalation on the North Korean side from the present state of I would say exchange of propaganda balloons from both sides. So the concern, not really a fear, but the concern on South Korean side is that by responding with loudspeakers to North Koreans sending the trash balloons to South Korea, that North Koreans might use that as an argument to essentially escalate the current friction to a level that involves actual firepower, such as artillery dual attack against the South Korean territory, like the one we observed back in 2010 and the shelling of the Yeonpyeong Island. So in a way, the current exercise could be interpreted as a South Korean way to preempt the North Korean intentions to escalate by demonstrating that if there's a further escalation and the North Koreans are tempted to use actual firepower to attack the South Korean side, the South Koreans are going to respond probably the triple the amount of attacks that North Koreans are going to possibly mount against South Korea.
South Korea, of course, doesn't want any further escalation on the Korean peninsula, so it's part of their calculation. But the live fire drills were held after South Korea suspended the 2018 inter-Korean military agreement, and Defense Minister Shin Won-sik, he is speaking before lawmakers at the parliament today, said that the agreement is so unfair to South Korea that it's like swapping a massive piece of land in the most expensive Gangnam area with a tiny piece of land in the countryside. So it looks like we'll continue to see South Korea will continue to beef up border defense along the border.
Well, it's more about readiness, I would say. The readiness on the part of South Korea send a message to North Korea that there's a very strong defense posture against the North, and if North Koreans are tempted to escalate, like the one they're doing right now by sending trash balloons, essentially it's an invitation to South Korea to escalate, that we're not taking the bait. But then also we are telling the North Koreans that with these exercises that we know what they're trying to do with the trash balloons, what's going to take after the trash balloons, and they were trying to preempt their next move.
North Korea criticized South Korea, the U.S., and Japan for developing what it called the Asian version of NATO after the three countries' first multi-domain joint drill dubbed the Freedom Edge. It slammed their quote-unquote provocative military muscle flexing against North Korea, warning of fatal consequences. Is this part of Pyongyang's attempt to justify its military alliance with Russia?
Well, there are many different ways to look at it, but then there's a consistency on the North Korean statement. North Korea has been saying for many years by now that the region, the Northeast Asia, has entered the so-called era of the new Cold War. So what it means is that there are two major blocs emerging in Northeast Asia. So there's the North Korea, Russia, China axis on one hand, and there's the Korea, Japan, United States bloc on the other. And this is something that the North Koreans has been claiming in order to justify their, I would say, aggressive stance towards Korea, Japan, and the United States. So by saying that Korea, Japan, and the United States are mounting aggressive or offensive measures against North Korea, that would justify their nuclear and missile development in the first place. And now, as you said, by signing this alliance with Russia, North Korea is claiming that this. I mean, so there are two levels to this, and one is clearly the fact that that North Korea and Russia are doing this in response to Korea, Japan, and the United States, but also to characterize their alliance as one of a defensive alliance. So that had been mentioned in the press conference, in which both the leaders of both Russia and North Korea claimed that the alliance that they just signed happened to be defensive in nature. So there's a continuation of that sense here. And also there's another motivation here, I believe, by using the term NATO. So it's something that it's actually essentially a word, a term that's very sensitive. Not so much here in the Korean Peninsula or Japan, but in China and Russia. NATO stands in for a major Western aggressiveness, and China is very critical of the U.S. effort to revamp the security architecture, make the security alliances the U.S. has with the allies here much more effective and flexible. And China characterizes the U.S. efforts as the Asian NATO. So the North Koreans, by using the term NATO, is just sending a message to Moscow and Beijing at the same time. And by doing so, North Korea is highlighting the fact that their strategic stance or approach is exactly the same as China and Russia's.
So it could be part of North Korea's tactic to further solidify the North Korea-Russia-China axis.
Yeah.
A plenary Central Committee meeting of North Korea's Workers' Party has wrapped up, but unlike many had anticipated, there were no mention of the new military pact signed between North Korea and Russia. What took center stage then? And we've talked a little bit about this before, but what's expected from the upcoming Spring People's Assembly?
So North Korea loves to surprise the international media. The international media expected North Korea to announce with grand fanfare that the follow-up measures to the signing of the pact between them and Russia. But then I think North Koreans, in order to somehow, I don't know, to surprise us, essentially only announced that I think it's a partial outcome of the meeting, which happens to be focused on the economic achievements. So that, we can look at this in different ways, but a benign interpretation was North Korea is essentially celebrating the achievement of not so much achieve diplomatic victory, but they are trying to somehow highlight their domestic achievements in the economic front, so that essentially to remind the people of North Korea that Kim Jong-un hasn't forgotten about them. So even though North Korea had put a lot of energy in hosting Vladimir Putin, in highlighting the signing of the pact with Russia, Kim Jong-un is going back to the domestic front and telling the people that North Korea had made progress in the economic front. Interesting enough, Kim Jong-un announced that North Korea had overachieved in economic outputs. And if that's indeed true, then it probably means that it reflects the expansion of a trade, or recovery, I would say, of the North Korea's external trade from the COVID years. We know that the North Korea's trade, not just with Russia, but also with China, has increased significantly, even though it hasn't recovered back to the pre-COVID levels. And increase in trade also a proxy for consumption in North Korea. So I mean, if there's an increased trade, it means that average North Koreans are consuming more, so which is a good sign. And hopefully North Koreans are essentially beyond, past the food emergencies that we've been very much afraid about, and in a much better state now.
Another aspect of the plenary meeting that grabbed media attention is the badges with a portrait of leader Kim Jong-un. Senior officials at the meeting were seen wearing the badges for the very first time. What are you reading into this?
Well, this was also a long time coming, I would say. So Kim Jong-un has been working on making, I would say, studying of a cult of personality around him since at least 2021. And we know this because that was when the North Koreans started to publicize, also essentially unveiling personal portraits of Kim Jong-un. And then in this portrait, Kim Jong-un was depicted exactly like his grandfather, Kim Il-sung, in the Kim Il-sung's signature white military dress. So this denotes something in North Korea, essentially signaling that Kim Jong-un is now had become a major leader of North Korea, a major historical figure, just like his grandfather in the country. And then that was taken as an indication that the North Koreans were preparing the first steps towards making Kim Jong-un a very powerful figure, which in case in North Korea would mean that Kim Jong-un would have the same status as Kim Il-sung, his grandfather. We know Kim Il-sung in North Korea has a status of a demigod. So in that sense, I think the appearance of the Kim Jong-un badges, and that implies that the efforts put into the cult of personality around Kim Jong-un has been making progress steadily. And now we'll be I think there'll be more news of this kind coming in the near future. We should be prepared for this.
13 years, it's been 13 years now into the Kim Jong-un regime, and Kim looks like he's now elevating his status to the level once reserved for his father and grandfather. A large vessel, meanwhile, has been spotted docked at North Korea's Dajin port this week, fueling speculation about possible weapons trade between North Korea and Russia. How does the U.S., how should, rather, the U.S. deal with growing North Korea-Russia arms cooperation?
Well, there are some options. I mean, we cannot stop North Korea and Russia from conducting their weapons trade. I mean, that would involve a major military action, and no one has an appetite for that, thankfully. But then what we can do is essentially sanctioning the entities that are involved, and also trying to curtail the flow of finance into these kind of operations. But then I think those will be measures that are more symbolic than effective. But the best way would be to prepare South Korea and Japan and the United States with measures to counteract any outcome from the weapons trade that's taking place right now. So, for instance, there's a less concern, at least in this part of the world, and also with the United States, relatively speaking, about the outflow of weapons from North Korea to Russia. The war in Ukraine is ongoing, and Ukrainians are having difficulties fending off the offensive by Russians. But then this can be countered by supplying more weapons to Ukrainians. What's more worrisome is the transfer of sensitive nuclear and missile technologies to North Korea. And this is going to be much more problematic for everybody involved. And obviously because North Korea is developing these weapon systems, and they also made it very clear that they are intent to use them. So it's going to be important to stop the flow into North Korea of sensitive North Korean technology. And I think in this case, sanctions are going to be in place, but I think the international community could essentially leverage the Russian weakness in the Ukrainian front to somehow send a message to Russia that they should interrupt or stop sending these technologies to North Korea. So I think the key lies with having more assistance being given to the Ukrainians that's more lethal, that's more effective, so that the Russians feel the pain, and they feel the pain because it's going to be the consequence of their actions with North Korea.
And how the U.S. deals with North Korea, of course, is an important point of discussion because Washington's North Korea policy holds great significance to South Korea, to the Northeast Asia, to the Asia-Pacific region, and beyond. And staying in the U.S., U.S. President Biden and former President Trump, during their first TV debate, they discussed little about North Korea, just trading a few remarks about how each of them handled Kim Jong-un. But reports are coming in that many countries are readying themselves for Trump's possible comeback after Biden's poor debate performance. What should South Korea take away from the debate?
Well, the debate itself revealed, as you said, very little about each. I mean, we know what President Biden thinks about the alliance. He had restored the importance the alliance had in the U.S. foreign policy. So we very much welcome that, and the allies responded eagerly by working very closely with the United States in revamping and renewing the security architecture the United States has around the world. With former President Trump as a different equation. But he said little about the alliance. He said more about Kim Jong-un and the other dictators that he had met. And he seems to be very confident and he can handle them personally. So what we can get from this little interaction that the two candidates had about the future of the U.S. foreign policy is that whereas President Biden is going to stick the course, put the priority on the alliance, with President Trump it's going to be a different game. I think he's going to conduct his foreign policy more based on the personal interactions with the counterparts. I don't think that's not only limited to the dictators, but also to other leaders with the U.S., I mean, essentially with any country. And I think that this is something that we have to take into consideration. So if President Biden was thinking about the U.S. foreign policy in the framework of a multilateralism, President Trump is going to be approaching this more in terms of bilateral relations, more of a personal interaction. And I think that this is something that we have experienced before in President Trump's first presidency. So we know something about it. We have an experience, and I don't think he is going to change his style completely. So at least there's less uncertainty about his foreign policy approach compared to from the first time that he became the president. So I think in that sense, we are more prepared, and then I think we shouldn't be too worried about the potential return of President Trump back to the White House.
Well, Mr. Trump has the tendency to take a business approach to alliance-related issues. And as you pointed out, he prefers the one-on-one relationship with world leaders and dictators, and he prefers bilateral relationship rather than multilateral relationship. So South Korea, we shouldn't be over worried about his possible comeback, but we will need corresponding strategies. Thank you so much, Dr. Go, as always, for your in-depth analysis.
Always my pleasure.
And that brings us to the end of this show. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in same time tomorrow to join our conversation. Goodbye for now.
There is no greater blessing than to have good health as you grow old. Even though my mom is over 70, she is peppy and full of energy. One day, our family started practicing Taekwondo, and it turned out to be a special blessing for us. Taekwondo family, return to happiness.
옛날에는 택시부터 시작해가지고 버스, 덤프트럭, 낮과 밤이 없이 몸이 부서지도록 일을 했죠. 그러다 보니까 몸이 많이 망가졌어요. 허리 협착증도 생겼고 무릎도 아프고 이제는 내 삶이 다 됐는갑다 생각을 하고 사는 것도 싫고 완전 좌절을 했죠.
지팡이를 짚고 다니실 만큼 근력이 약해지셔가지고 너무 힘들었는데 우연찮게 실버 태권도라는 거를 알게 되셨어요.
다리도 안 올라갔거든요, 솔직히. 근데 64세부터 태권도를 해서 7년째 하고 있습니다.
인상도 너무 밝아지셨고 빨리 가고 싶다고 하시고 도복을 보면서 흐뭇해 하시더라고요. 그때부터 어머니의 삶이 다시 시작.